Thanks everyone. So this is my first time on stage at a crypto conference. So I brought this like emotional spirit support animal sponsored by BingX. They told me I had to do that for 25 likes. So I'll be posting that later on, please, so don't come get me. But I want to talk about a few things today. One in the main topic is developer joy, and I've titled this called "The Only Metric That Matters," and I'll kind of explain why later on. But my name is Dappa Dan, and yes, you do need to say Dappa Dan. I only go by Dan unless we're friends. And since you're all here today, we're all friends, so you can call me just Dan. But on the internet, Dappa Dan is my go-to, as or my where you'll find me on socials. I say what I'm really focused on is being a developer and content creator. Someone called me a unicorn. I don't call myself that, but I really focus on kind of building things to get people excited about this technology, and then also making content to do that as well. And I help other teams do the same thing. This is not me in the photo. As you can probably tell, but some people either A, think, hey, wow, he got a really good job, hair done in Turkey or something like that, and no, that's not the case. And also, some people, if they know that this is actually RuPaul. So if you didn't know that was RuPaul and you thought RuPaul was going to be on the stage today, I'm sorry, it's just me. But there's three things we're going to do and focus on is first, like, why developer joy matters. And I'm going to actually talk about this, why it matters first, then like what it actually is, so that once you kind of get, oh, this is really important, you'll actually get a more understanding of what developer joy is, and kind of a term that I sort of made up, but really kind of just focusing on what we're bringing developers in this industry. And then lastly is how to measure it, because I said, okay, this is a metric that only one that matters. And people love measuring things here in crypto, even if the numbers are small or big or completely made up. So I'm going to show also how we will measure developer joy and what are the things I think is best to focus on. A couple of things we're not going to do. I am a part of a cult called Crypto Twitter. I'm not sure if anyone else is part of that cult, but I'm sure some of you are. And we all the time, I see a lot of presentations, they have like tons of like Twitter screenshots of like, oh, look what Vitalik said, or look what this CEO said. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm not going to give them that much credit. This is my presentation and my own thoughts. So there won't be any, Twitter screenshots. I hope, at least. I didn't add any in there, but you never know. Things can happen and they could pop up from out of nowhere. Another thing I'm going to do is I will have my own opinions. Again, this is my presentation, but I'm not going to say, oh, this is a hot take. I know that as an industry as well, we're very obsessed with that term, hot take. If you think the take is hot, that's a hot take. And if not, then that's what it is. But I won't give you any like warnings coming up. So we'll first look at why this whole developer joy thing matters, or just engaging developers with the types of material and content that I think is important. And a wise man once said, a very sweaty man said, developers, 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 developers. Has anyone seen that video? Come on, I can't be the only one. Huh? Yeah. Oh, he got the clapping. It was Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft at that time, going absolutely crazy. You got to see it if you haven't. But really, the idea was like Microsoft had came to this realization that if they had good tooling for developers, basically the rest would take care of itself, right? We need to like just focus on our libraries and tooling, and they're going to build products on this platform, and we don't need to do as much marketing and things like that. Like that's the core audience, and that's it. And I'm not going to get that sweaty today, hopefully. So I'm not going to do all the clapping or anything like that. But I do really share this sentiment, especially when we're talking about the crypto industry as a whole. And one of the things I want to kind of like put into story-wise, I guess, is this idea of system thinking. Has anyone read this book? Yeah? Okay, a few. I've tried to read this book like 4 times, and it's a really good book, and so it's nothing against the book itself, and maybe it's like my own reading patience or reading skills. But one of the things very early on in the book is like the 3rd chapter, so this is like how far I've gotten in this book, is this concept of a bathtub and like the systems of a bathtub. And if the goal of the bathtub, if you will, is to have water in that bathtub, there's actually like 2 ways to manage the water, right? So first is like the faucet, or like how you add water, but then also there is the drainage, right? Because water either can come in, you're adding water, or it can go out. So in certain times, you might want to just stop the drainage, stop losing water, because then you're still managing the water that's in it. and or you want to add more water, and hey, that's another way to manage or keep the water within this bathtub. And if you have like the drain on and the faucet, you have this like weird situation where water's coming out and in, and depending on the rate, you might have water, you might have no water at all. Why am I even talking about bathtubs today, right? I don't know. I think it's because I think we have a bathtub problem in crypto. This is Electric Capital developer report. It's a report that I think they're like, Electric Capital, like a VC firm. They release every year, but they also have this like live view now where you can kind of see developer activity in this industry, and they have different metrics. And there's tons of people out there, as they do, debating if this is a worthy metric to look at, because it tracks out of GitHub repos, and if their repo's not included in there, they feel upset. But I think it's like one of the best things that at least we have to understanding developer activity. So I use it all the time just to understand what's going on. And if you look at it, we have 3 different kind of categories for developers. One is like newcomers. That's anyone, a developer that's been less than 1 year in crypto. The emerging, which is like 1 to 2 years, and then established, which is anyone 2+ years. So I'm not a data analyst by any means at all. So when I look at this, maybe my analysis is like completely off. But what I like to look at is like we have a good spike of like newcomers coming in, right? We had, I don't know what happened, 2023, and then we had like a really good day. I don't know if this is like day, but we had a really good day that day onboarding new developers in. I don't know what happened. Maybe something really cool happened. But and then the established developers naturally are also kind of having a good increase, which is nice. But then we have this like emerging developer that either people are they're just going from emerging to established, so they're just staying longer, or B, they stay for 1 year and they kind of, I don't know, get bored, or they're start leaving, or maybe they don't have enough opportunities or understanding of the industry. So we have a lot of curious people, and the newcomers obviously can be something that we increase. We have some people who are working and come to every crypto conference there is and do these talks and all of that and building something cool. But then I don't think this like middle is really growing as much as you would think it would as a healthy industry. So that's kind of why I'm looking at this concept of developer joy and bathtubs, because it's the developers that are in the bathtub, right? This is the water that we would need to maintain as a growing industry, and of people who are building useful things for consumers, for other developers, for industries, enterprises. It's this audience. And developer joy, when I look at it, is all about maintaining that audience, keeping the developers in the bathtub, if you will. That's enough about bathtubs. But one of the things is that, maybe you don't feel like, some people, when I come and say, developers are a prime audience, developers are getting too much attention, right? They get into, hackathons, they get thousands of dollars for just coming on the weekend, they get fed, all this like special treatment, and obviously everyone is not a developer. But what if you're starting to realize out here is like, everyone in this room, even if you don't consider yourself a developer, or at least have these skills or the techniques or tools out there to build something that could be really useful for a lot of people. So it's the rise of this vibe coding, right? And if we look at the growth of amount of people who either consider themselves developers or could be developers, we also want then the growth of the developers in crypto to also grow in the same ways. And you see this a lot in this world, right? I'm a YouTube addict, so you won't get any Twitter screenshots, but you're gonna get some YouTube screenshots for sure. It's like this giant excitement of, I'm a vibe coder, I can launch something in, $1 million app, which I don't even know if that means like you made $1 million, it costs $1 million, I don't know. But $1 million AI app, $750 a day. I haven't done the math, that's like really an impressive thing, but, and then like, $10,000 app. And I'm not saying up here that like we need to have someone saying, I made the $1 million crypto app solo. But what I think this is kind of indicating to the wider industry or the wider world is that people are building things that are useful. And they don't need to have a computer science degree or consider themselves to be developers 5 years ago as of what they are today, because of all the tools that are available out there. And if that's true, we should then see a huge uptick for crypto as far as developers, because if we are revolutionizing the world of finance, like so we say we are, certainly some people should be able to build other things that are quite useful, and we really need to get them to be more inspired, and that's really, again, another core of what developer joy is. And oftentimes I feel like we come out to these sort of conferences, and one of the things I've tried to be doing now is like onboarding newer people to this industry, and the haters have the same argument where it's crypto. There's no real crypto apps out there, and of course we have conferences every week. It seems like when we all talk amongst ourselves about what's available and what the amazing things we're building and the tools that are available, and then we kind of ignore that argument, and then we go back to the panel session of just onboarding 1 billion users, and we need to go back to, I think, the roots or the fundamentals of maybe these people are right, maybe there are no real crypto apps, and how do we then inspire people to build those or tell the stories of people who are building them in a way that they can kind of consume it? If you think there are real crypto apps, I'm just going to let that be up to you to decide that. If there are, more people should be able to understand that or that if someone comes with this argument, you should have 5 different ways to defeat the argument, if you will. And I think one of the big problems that we have, and this is exposing my weird American bias here, but there was this ad in the 90s, and it was around great. It's I don't know, it was advertising something around a lobbyist of dairy, the dairy lobby in the US. So they need to have commercials for this in the US. And it was a really interesting ad. You should look it up on YouTube. The cows are actually talking, so that's a huge thing to go check out. The cows are actually talking about how they were in Wisconsin at one time, and it was a terrible life because it was so cold. And then the mom cow basically is saying, well, good thing we're in California now. And the whole ad is around that great cheese comes from happy cows. And where do happy cows come from? Happy cows come from California. I don't know what you do with that information. I don't know if you move your cows, if you have cows to California or not. But the whole idea is, right, happy things, if they're producing somewhere, is a good thing. And I feel in the world of crypto, we need more happy devs. And I think that's kind of where one of the core focuses of developer joy is how do we create that? Because happy devs actually create happy products or useful products. So let's actually define what developer joy is now. So hopefully you get a concept that some of this matters, because again, that's kind of the survival of this industry and building things that are useful. And again, it's not just a particular audience saying just developers, but all developers and the abilities for developers to build things are kind of really expanding. And I have 3 E's of developer joy. First is education, second is enablement, and the third is entertainment. What I've realized is the state of being a developer and how you choose the tools that you build on is changing quite dramatically with the rise of very much AI coding assistants, so Cursor, Cloud Code, and GitHub Copilot, as well as the million others that everyone says is now the new meta or the new best thing to build on. Because before, as a developer, what we decide on is if this tool was easy to use or accessible to use. But now I don't really care if it's easy to use, as long as Claude understands how to use it. So that changes a lot of things in terms of how you actually develop and make content to attract developers to build on, and again, ultimately making more happier developers, right? And on the side of education, I think it's not that we need to explain exactly how our protocol or our project works, but really answer the question of why would I use this instead of the 100 other things to do, 100 other things to actually use. And again, if you're looking at the world of AI coding assistants, it's me basically making the decision of, hey, Cloud Code, use this or consume this documentation because I think it's going to lead to a better product or a better service that I'm making for my project, rather than, oh, okay, I need to understand, I need to read your white paper or something like that to get an understanding of what's useful. So everything that you do in terms of building on a project should be answering this question. So your marketing should answer this question of, if I need, how do you actually compare and what's important, unique to your project? Your documentation documentation rather than it's just explaining, again, in diagrams and all of these things about what other things are, how these things are working. You should still be answering this question of how unique and why a developer would choose to use your tool over all the other things. And I don't mean this in like a super competitive way where you need to like say, oh, we're better than 3 other things, but there should be something really beneficial for your project. And if there's not, then you should probably wrap it up and go do something else, to be honest. On an enablement side is, show me how others are having to use it. So again, one of the big things when we're talking about AI and coding assistants is that, okay, well, we have all of these abilities to, use this documentation, use these tools, but when I actually get down to it and start constructing an application, whether that's for a hackathon or for reality, I need some general inspiration about how this thing works and how I would implement it to even guide the AI in a better way. And you're probably, some of you are representing projects here. If I go to your documentations now and I see if there's any coding samples or actually projects that have been using here and they're open source, I will probably get depressed because, to be honest, I think we have a huge need for this type of thing, whether that's even using things that are built at hackathons, like we're having a hackathon this weekend, and I know, not to pick on you, Gollum guys, right? Like, there's going to be some people building on Gollum, so why not just take those repos if you think they're useful, refine them if you think there needs to be some improvements, and then post about them and talk about them. Because then I now, as a developer, understand, oh, okay, these are things and how it works. And again, I'm making the decision, which I showed last time, of yes, this is something that I think might be useful and comparing to all the other things. So that was your free consulting, Gollum. But this is an idea, right? So you need to have an enablement and a story around that in terms of showing actual real coding samples, real inspiration to get developers to actually start building on these things. And then on the entertainment side, so I don't know. I've worked in this kind of world of developer relations about 6 years now, and I've went from this concept of developer relations to developer experience, which is really focusing around the documentation and what's the available tools that are on there. So the whole experience of that. And then I was like, okay, but I think there's got to be something more. Again, if we're not focusing purely on just building great documentation, which can be argued is almost not necessarily not useless, but some of the skills and perspectives that we have are now outdated in the world of AI coding agents. So how do you get developers to start building on the things that you want them to do? And I think, it's crazy to say, but developers are people too, and lots of people enjoy being entertained. So I really sort of embraced, okay, developer entertainment, like how do we make really good content or really engaging videos where, okay, this looks like someone's having fun or getting some sort of developer joy from it, then I'll get inspired to start building on that. And I really think when we talk about entertainment just in a general sense, it is that, what is your story? So what is your story as a project? And, why should I be a character in it? And what I mean by that is, a lot of these projects, they want to, show support. They build out grant programs. They do hackathons. And it's all about how to align the developer to, the goals of your project. And hopefully, the biggest thing is that we want this to have some sort of long-term engagement. But that's actually a huge sacrifice for a developer to take, especially in an industry like this where there's high risk, there's high scams, there's high rugs, right? So you need to, as a project, understand and tell a better story of that this is the thing that we want to build, and it could be very compelling in terms of how we want to change the world, but then why do I need to be a character in it? What do I contribute to that goal? Is quite important to explain. And you can do that through content. You can do that through your founders coming up to these talks. And we've obviously seen many examples where that's gone wrong, but you also see tons of builders who have dedicated their time, their talents, and their treasures in terms of building an ecosphere. And you need to continue to improve that story and refine it to keep them going on there. So the last thing I will kind of close it is how to measure it, right? So we understand, this sort of thing matters in terms of just getting some engagement around developers. It's, I think, again, crucial to the survival of our industry. The second is like, what it actually is. So, we want to have education, we want to have them enabled, and we have them entertained, but how do you then decide if you're doing a good job or not? And again, I say that, we love numbers here in crypto. Even, again, if they're made up, if they're fluctuated, things like that. Because I think we have, as all humans do, a desire to see some sort of progress as our industry, right? We're not just making things to make things. And we have things like TVL, block size, yaps, and all of these. How many Twitter followers we have, the deployed contracts, and I've seen so many debates on these numbers, right? Oh yeah, this is made up, or this is how you compare our numbers to theirs. And I really think when we want to measure things, it's not about just there's nothing wrong about loving numbers, but it's also about picking the right numbers to measure. And when we talk about developer joy, you really can't game this in a way where, oh yeah, I have a lot of developer joy because I have all of the deployed smart contracts on our chain, or all the active wallets on our chain. That's just not really the name of the game, or really authentic when we're talking about it. So I think, again, it's one of these things where we want to kind of take a shift from the basic metrics like community size, which I've seen many different ways of how this is measured, whether it's your Discord users, which is I remember that back a few years ago, and now it's oh yeah, they're all bots. Oh, okay, well the 10,000, 110,000 in whatever Discord is completely made up. And I think we should try to transition that to actually the number of true advocates that you have on your project. And what I mean by that is not go run an advocacy program or have some advocates. I think that's also a very much an exchange, right? I've been a part of advocate programs before where it's yeah, post some content every week and then we're going to send you a shirt. It's going to be really cool and you can wear it around the conferences and you're our advocate. And that's nothing against those type of programs. But what I mean by advocates is who would you call, at 3 a.m. when you need to have a testimony because you want to unlock some, VC funding because you want to prove that you've actually developed something that's useful for other developers or actually tools. And I know, again, I'm not going to name specific people here, of people who are true advocates for different projects out there who actually receive no compensation, but they actually get a lot of joy between using their project or building on their tool or whatever. And I know for a fact that if these companies and these protocols are more aware of those people, this is actually a good measure of that. And again, going back to my life as we're doing a lot of hackathons, right? I dedicate lots of time to building on the hackathons. I do get some compensation if I win a prize, but I can probably less maybe 2 protocols that have actually reached out to me after the hackathon to do any type of partnership or collaboration, which, if you continue to do that, your number of true advocates will actually grow and people will start to realize that. So instead of using large inflated numbers like community size, really focus on how many advocates that you have within your community that, again, will be able to provide a real statement of the value that you're bringing. The other one is number of active projects. So this is another cool thing that people like to show, right? We have all of these, look at our ecosphere, we have all these logos on our website and they all look the same, but hey, they could be AI generated, I don't know. This is a huge thing that, again, a lot of people use, either show growth or receive some VC funding, things like that. I don't know what they're using it for. But instead of having a number of active projects, I think the diversity of projects and even the diversity of builders within your ecosystem is probably even more important and actually shows true developer joy. So what do I mean by that? Well, the diversity of projects, first and foremost, is that, hey, we're instead of just having, we are the X of Y chain, then that's not really going to give you long-term type of growth, right? Because this is going to decide, hey, when that project moves to a new chain because they receive more funding, then you don't have any active actual projects. So diversifying on the types of projects that you have in your ecosystem is far more important because you get that longevity on the ability to sort of survive within it. Also in diversity of builders, and I don't just mean on a personal level, but how many builders do you have on onboarding? I would love our project to say we're the number one chain or project for new developers. That's all we focus on is new developers. Or we're the number one chain for established developers because we have all these different tools. I think that's far more important than just the number of projects, especially if it's the same 4 people building on that project, but they're just moving it from chain to chain or, from ecosystem to ecosystem. And lastly is this focus on timeline mindshare. And I think mindshare is a really big thing. It's really important, right? You gotta have people talking about it. And again, you want to be top of mind for developers and all community in terms of that. And it's really rewarding. You get that dopamine hit. every time you make a post and it goes like viral. That's really great. But I think in the terms of developers and developer joy, like let's get up some GitHub heart share. And heart share, I know some like term like, oh, okay, this is like, he's just like making this up or something. But, instead of like, you can actually see what developers are building. It's like a site called github.com. And you can do code searching just to see what tools and things like that people are using. And if you're all using your competitor, you can actually see, okay, why did that happen? Are they easier to use? Do they have better documentation? Things like that. And also, you can also see when developers are using your tools, and especially when you're not the sponsor of a hackathon or not paying them directly, that's a far better measurement of that you're actually bringing some joy to developers versus that we're just paying them to use the thing for that weekend and then leaving out. So really optimized for heart share than just this kind of timeline share where you're just having a moment and not actually getting any impact from the developer side of things. So I think some of you might listen and say, oh, Dan, developer joy, that's not for me. I'm not doing the developers. Like, that's not that important. But I honestly think why I say that this is the metric that matters is like going back to the developers of Steve Ballmer, is that developer joy is not just for developers. It's marketing joy. If you have active developers making content that you don't even pay for, developers talking about your project and also deploying applications that are very interesting and get attention, that's marketing joy. That's not even like within your budget. That's founder joy, right? So you don't need to have a founder come in and shake everyone's hand at a round table or do 1,000 panels per conference just to get some insights of what developers are building. Instead, you have a lot of developers already providing that feedback, providing that information. Again, saving a lot of time, a lot of stress. And then, the classic one, I've never done any raising in crypto, but it's like, oh, but the VCs, they need these metrics, they need these other types, that's why we have a botted Twitter account. And that's fine if you want to do all of that. But even when we're talking about venture capitalists and their ultimate goals of longevity, of building some sort of long-term plan and some sort of return on their investments, if you have a lot of developer joy, that is going to kind of contribute to all of these sort of metrics and all these other things that I think are not necessarily distractions, but leave us in a world where we have less happy devs, which that's the big thing. So I'm going to close out. This is my first time on stage at a crypto conference, so I don't think Maya Angelou is like #1 quoted person for a crypto conference. Most is Vitalik and whatever he says in the white paper. But I think this is kind of sums up a lot of things around developer joy, which is I love that people will forget what you said. Right? People will forget what you did, but people will never forget what you made them feel. So if you're a project that has some sort of strategy or need for developers to use your tool, your project, whatever, it's all about how you make developers feel. And if you make them feel joyful, you will ultimately have a lot of success in this world. So that's my talk.
Thanks, Dan. We have slot for one question, so let's pick a good one. Have a good one?
Oh.
Rooting for one more advice here. Do you have some favorite Web3 or Web2 projects that are doing it right, that are bringing that joy to developers, in your opinion? Let's start with Web3.
Yeah, I do. I get this question a lot, and I could have filled this whole slide with the samples, but I don't get. I would say what is behind this slide and what they're doing. Like, you should be able to reverse engineer and say this is going to be that. So I want you to tell me which ones you feel are most joyful versus like, this, big shout out to blah, blah, blah protocol. They're doing it the best, right? Go do what they do, because you're only going to find out in your own way how to bring developer joy. So let me know after this what you feel is going well. Yeah, Stripe Dogs. Yeah, everyone says that. Stripe Dogs. Yeah, there's never been another docs after that. It's just been Stripe docs. Yeah.
Perfect. Dan, thank you so much. Huge applause.